I'll start this off by saying I've had a few rough weeks of training after a full month off. I didn't fail any lifts, but I had to bail on several sets before I actually did fail. Based on the understanding of my own fatigue, I was able to avoid that terrible feeling of missing a rep. If you've been there, you know that feeling. In this video, I'll be covering what a layoff can do to your progress and exactly what contributes to drop-offs in strength and performance. But more importantly, I'll talk about how to go about rebuilding that momentum towards new PRs and those sweet gains we had before we halted our own progress by quitting the gym cold turkey. Why would I ever take time off of the gym, you might ask? Is it really that I couldn't balance my time, or did I not try hard enough to make it work? I'll take responsibility and say I gave up on making it work. Sometimes we really can't train due to injuries and things out of our control, but that is out of the scope of this video. That isn't really what happened to me, and I'm sure a lot of you have had a similar situation where you basically chose not to train. Between the holidays and moving into my first house, I had a hard time prioritizing training over those things. In addition to a large layoff from training, I switched gyms as well. Fortunately, I switched to a much better gym, as you can see when comparing this video to the first one I posted. All the environmental factors of my training had improved dramatically. I basically have a private facility all to myself on most days that I train. The equipment quality is drastically improved. I can play my own music on the speakers, and it doesn't feel anything like the commercial gym I was accustomed to. Oh, and I can use chalk. I could continue this train of thought for much longer, but I'll save that for another video. Today I want to talk about how to go about training after a layoff, and ultimately, how to go about training in general. Everyone is going to have a different idea of what a large layoff is. Some would say a year, a few months, or maybe even a week if you're an animal who's been at it for decades. Personally, I've only been training what I'd consider seriously for about 6 months to a year, but I've been consistently lifting weights for almost 2 years. For those 2 years, I haven't taken more than a few days or a week completely off of training, so that month I took off recently seemed pretty substantial. Much of the research out there tells us that taking a few weeks off won't change much about us on the surface. There's typically little to no loss in muscle mass if we aren't completely sedentary during that time off. However, strength loss, or lack thereof, isn't so consistent between individuals. Things such as how many years someone has been training, their training tolerance, and the focus and proficiency of that style of training, such as like strength, hypertrophy, mobility, etc., all have a measurable impact on our training success after a layoff. But we shouldn't put too much stock in how substantial those influences are. Many of us, including myself, prefer a strictly objective view of training. I'd like to think that if I do this, I'll get that. If I add 5 pounds to the bar every session and give it my all, I can follow that trajectory indefinitely. If I fix this one flaw in my technique for a given lift, the gains will ensue. It'd be great if a single specific solution could be applied to every roadblock we encounter. But in many cases, especially in the case of rebuilding lost strength, it's more complicated than that. Unfortunately for us, we aren't machines. We operate largely on raw emotion that is influenced by our perceptions of ourselves and the people around us. Our psychological state has much of an influence, often a stronger influence than our biological state. Once we acknowledge that, we can incorporate some strategies to use our individual experiences to produce objectively positive results. We get to have our cake and eat it too. Coming back to the gym and noticing drop-offs in work capacity and strength can cause us to catastrophize our situations before we even get started. It's important to go into the process without an overly positive expectation of picking up where we left off or an overly negative expectation of starting from square one. Both scenarios are volatile and can be avoided by focusing on where we're at now with no comparisons to past or present versions of ourselves. In health and fitness coaching, you'll often hear the phrase, meet your client where they're at. That's exactly what you'll be doing, but you're the coach and the client. Finally, we arrive at the solution. 3 simple letters, RPE, which stands for rate of perceived exertion. Without getting too into detail, it's simply an autoregulation tool that allows you to adjust your training from day to day or week to week in order to manage fatigue. You start by simply performing a set of a given exercise, and upon completion, take a moment to rate that difficulty level between a 1 and a 10. You can simplify the method even more by using RPE 5 as 5 reps in the tank, RPE 6 as 4 reps in the tank, RPE 7 as 3 reps in the tank, and so on. This same rating system is used to rate your daily fatigue level. For example, man, that workout was an RPE 10. I'm not even sure I can drive home. Or conversely, that workout was cake. I'd call it an RPE 5. Whoever wrote this program is weak. The goal is to get in touch with your feelings at any given stage of your training and use them to decide the volume and intensity of your training on any given day or week. Once you understand how to use RPE consistently, you can rate each set, session, or training week with ease. With that skill in your gym bag, you will no longer feel like it's the end of the world when things don't go your way. RPE may not be for everyone, but if you want to be in the driver's seat in as many aspects of your training as possible, it may be for you. If I hadn't taken the time to understand and incorporate RPE into my training leading up to this layoff, coming back would have certainly caused much more unnecessary stress on me, both physical and mental. Instead of failing reps with weights I expect to lift based on outdated PRs that occurred after months of training adaptations, I've been able to calmly meet myself where I was upon returning to the gym. I was able to account for the stresses in my day-to-day life as well as my minor loss of strength when making decisions on how hard to push or not push each day. I'll link some resources in the description if you want more information on RPE and how to go about incorporating it into your training. As usual, my social media links will be in there as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.